Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Yes, it is that time again. It is time for another Letterboxd recap, or a monthly recap, looking at everything that I watched in the month of June, including TV and films. And within the films, that will be rewatches, new watches of old films, and new watches of brand new horror. In fact, in this month, I think I watched 4 new horror for this year, not necessarily for this month, but for this year. As always, we will begin with the TV that I watched and then move on to the films, just working in chronological order through my logs on Letterboxd. Now, it is boiling hot here in the UK today, and I am filming in a very small box room with technology creating heat, the light creating heat. I am melting, so we're just going to get going and we're going to go through this as quickly as we can. Okay, so kicking off with TV. Now, I have in my last Letterboxd recaps mentioned that I have been making my way through Star Trek Next Generation and the X-Files. I have dropped off Star Trek, I will be honest. However, I am still carrying on with the X-Files, and we are now on, is it season 5 or 6? It's the last season before the film came out in 1998. I am still so happy to be rewatching or revisiting the X-Files. If you've seen my previous recaps, you will know that I have a love-hate relationship, or an uneasy relationship, in terms of how the characters of Mulder and Scully are written. And this season is kind of no different, this time in terms of Mulder. Now, for some reason, something happened with Scully. It has shaken Mulder's faith in what he so passionately believed, and he has done a 180 flip to the other side, is now so against all of his previous beliefs. And while I think that that is an interesting route to go, but I think they've gone about it in the wrong way. The way they are now portraying Mulder, he is insufferable, and I think a better route would be to make him vulnerable. You know, he's been shaken to his core and his beliefs. Make him vulnerable, make him question things, and then we'll see that growth. But the route they've gone is not the right one in my opinion. But I am still really enjoying it. It's a bizarre season. There have been some, bizarre episodes. There was one that was completely done in black and white and ended with a visit to Cher in Vegas or something like that. So really enjoying it. I did also complete the 3rd season of Bridgerton with the release of part 2 this month. I was really excited for it. I was looking forward to it. I wasn't necessarily disappointed, but I didn't love it. My thoughts on it remain the same as last month after watching part 1. I feel like rather than the focus being on Colin and Penelope and their love story, as it has been in previous seasons, focused on the main 2, there has been too much sharing of the story time. And so the focus hasn't really been on them, and I think that it has suffered for trying to tell too many stories. I just think it was fun. It was visually fun. It's not historically accurate, but it's a good time. And, so there's plenty of positives. It's a fun watch, but this wasn't as strong as season 1 and 2, in my opinion. Okay, what else? What else have I been watching? Oh yes, I have started my yearly rewatch of Gilmore Girls. I generally fancy this in autumn winter time because they have such cute little outfits with their hats and the coats and the gloves, and they have a lot of the early seasons are filmed into fall time, so I often crave that. And I am going on the exact same journey that I go on every time I rewatch this show. I love so much about this show, but this is a show that was not meant to be binge watched. I don't think. That's my theory. This is a show that you were supposed to watch one a week because, it came out back in the day. And when you stream this, it so clearly illuminates how toxic, unpleasant, self-involved, spoilt people Lorelai and Rory are. Now, I love many a thing about Rory at times. I love many a thing about Lorelai at times. In fact, there are numerous things about Lorelai that I see myself in her in some of it. So it's horrendous when you see how toxic she is at times. And I'm like, oh, please don't tell me that I have that trait as well. They're just spoiled and entitled, but the parents, the grandparents, and the town have made them this way because they act like the sun shines out of their arse. And there's a part of me that does want to live in Stars Hollow. I love how everyone is so bizarre. But them too, just when you watch so much of it, it just highlights all of their flaws. And there are times when I'm seething at the screen. Okay, another thing that I watched was the most recent and apparently final season of Archer. I think this is season 14. Let me just check. Yes, season 14. This was released on Netflix a couple of months ago. I didn't watch it straight away because I love Archer so much. It's one of my favorite TV shows, but the seasons are never that long. So I tend to savor the idea that there is new Archer content out there. But it was still mad to me that this was the final season, and I only realized when watching the finale. Each episode is about 20 minutes long, and the last one was about an hour because it was a 3-part finale when it had been released on TV, but on Netflix it was just a chunk, it was just the hour. And you realize as it's going on that it's taking so long, workers are just leaving, that something massive is happening, and they start sort of wrapping up characters' storylines. It just felt really emotional to watch the final episode of the show that I love so much and have watched for so many years. I haven't loved every episode, and again, like Gilmore Girls, there's love and there's hate. Some of the characters in it are problematic, and the attitude of them towards Archer, in that none of them can own their own. They always use Archer as a scapegoat for all of their baggage. I find frustrating. There was no walking off into the sunset happy ending that you often get in a lot of TV shows, but I think everything was quite satisfying for the journey these characters had gone on, especially for Archer, the main character. I think that how they left things for him made perfect sense. Then I also, so much TV this month, I also rewatched an ITV production of Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey, which was from, I believe, 2006. This was one that I just had a hankering to sort of revisit Regency style things after watching Bridgerton, so I gave that one a rewatch. It's a lot less serious than some other Jane Austen productions, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but that's a good time. And then finally, I have to read the title because it's so long, I watched Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok Cult. This is a new documentary on Netflix that came out this year. It follows the story of sisters Miranda and Melanie and their parents, Kelly and Dean, who have lost one of their daughters. I believe it's Miranda. She and Melanie were like online personalities, and then Miranda got caught up in this 7M cult. It's this talent agency that is fronting a religious cult that is run by a guy called Robert Shin. And you know, this is a Netflix documentary, so you have the usual dramatization, you have the manipulation of your emotions. Some of the ones that Netflix produces are on point, they're incredible, but some of them are a miss, some of them are distasteful, some of them are just over dramatized and try to make it so glossy, and I feel like this was one that bordered more on that, and there was a lot of repetitive stuff. It was okay, it was average, it was fine. Okay, now I think that's everything that I watched in terms of TV, so let's move on to the movies. Again, this is just going to go through the order of me logging them on Letterboxd. Do you know what? I told a lie. I said at the beginning there were 4 new horrors for this year. There's actually 5. I watched so much new horror this month. The first one I watched on the 4th of June, and that is Tarot. This is the new, I would say, teen-esque horror movie that was released, I believe, about a month ago. When a group of friends recklessly violate the sacred rule of tarot readings, they unknowingly unleash an unspeakable evil trapped within the cursed cards. One by one, they come face to face with fate and end up in a race against death. So, Tarot. This is one that I actually considered going to see at the cinema because while I did not have very high expectations from it, I didn't write it off as I'm gonna hate this. I kind of have a weakness, a soft spot for films like Polaroid, Bye Bye Man, The Empty Man, what else we had, Ouija, you know, those ones that are clearly tapping into the success of Ringu and The Ring, where you have a bunch of teens cursed usually by an object or an event, whether it's a camera, a videotape, a Ouija board. And so I was quite intrigued in that sense. Now, in my review on Letterboxd, I was a little bit scathing because I watched it and there was enjoyment to be had. This is one that I can see myself rewatching. It's one that I can see me watching with my mini-me, where we do the burn unit, where we sort of ironically and unironically take the mick out of a film, all with affection, but you know, it's fun to mock it. I can see it being one of those. I mean, I've rewatched Countdown, so you know, I don't mind rewatching a bad movie. Enjoyment aside and willing to give it a rewatch, I have to be honest, this is a horror 101. This is a cookie cutter horror. They have got themselves a how-to book and they have ticked off. Do you remember in school in English where you would be given a character, a setting, and a problem, or like a situation, and you had to write a story around it? That's what it feels like this is. There's so many cliched moments. Like, I was doing the evolution of jump scares around the same time that I had watched this, and I was kind of sat there with my mental little tick list of jump scares. I was like, right, okay, so there's someone behind them, there's the loud noise, there's the bird one, there's the something driving past really quickly. You know, all these different jump scares, they were just all in there. They were all ticked off. And it just felt quite formulaic at times and predictable. And also full of characters making stupid decisions, because in the first kill, you have this character who's home alone in this sorority house. She knows all the other girls are out. She's on the phone to a friend. She hears weird noises, like someone's in the house. And instead of saying to the person on the phone, going, look, I've heard a noise, I think someone's back, but I'm not sure. Can you just hang on the phone for me? If you hear something, you know, the phone goes dead, can you call the police to come help me? She's like, oh, I'll be back in a minute. I'll call you back in a minute. Turns the phone off or ends the call and goes to investigate on her own, including going off up into the attic where the strange sounds. There's also a character who throughout the whole film has been the only one open to the final girl's suggestion of the paranormal. And then about 2/3 in, suddenly changes their whole belief system and changes their willingness to accept what is going on, and goes, I don't believe that. Even having just witnessed it, I don't believe that. I'm off. You guys are mad. I'm off. And just goes off on their own. So putting themselves in a vulnerable position where they can be targeted by one of the villains. Ugh. So frustrating. It's not needed. Just because it's a teen horror film doesn't mean it needs to be dumbed down. There are some unintentionally funny moments, like for example, there's a lot of focus on astrology and your astrology signs, and the final girl is talking about someone who's died, and she's deadly serious, trying to persuade them. She's like, he was an earth sign. They found him in dirt. But hands down, in my opinion, the best thing of this film, there's a little bit where an older, wise sage character comes into it. They give a lot of backstory, exposition dump, and they're telling the story from, I believe, like maybe the 17 or 1800s. And it's about this woman who was called an astrologer, or the astrologer. And this is the person who has made the deck of cards. And this backstory of the astrologer and this count that she worked for is the best thing about the film. And I did a full review of this film for my patrons, and I said that while I'm not a huge fan of every horror film having to become a franchise, having to have a prequel or sequel, I would love a period horror that was based on just this character's story, done well, making it a little bit darker, because there's horror in it, there's tragedy, there's witchcraft. I just really loved it, and I would love to see that made as a whole film. Okay, so I gave Tarot 2 out of 5 stars. Okay, also on the 4th of June, I did a rewatch of Pearl because with the upcoming release of Maxine, I have been doing a recap of both Pearl and X. So I rewatched Pearl. I love this film. I loved it from the first time that I watched it. Out of the two, I think I do prefer Pearl to X just because it has this technicolor, whimsical, fantastical Wizard of Oz setting. You know, when Dorothy ends up in Oz, it's like that. Everything's so vibrant and cheerful, and then that's contrasted with the brutality of Pearl killing people with, you know, the crocodile, with deaths by axe. So I love the visuals and the aesthetic of it. There's not much more to say about it, really. Although I know that Pearl is not for everybody, it has become abundantly clear from the lack of views on my Pearl recap that this film is not for everybody, but I can see why. But I love it. So I gave Pearl 5 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, then on the 6th of June was another rewatch of one of my favourite films of all time, and that is Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz, the second installment in the Cornetto trilogy. This is his action film entry. This is the blue Cornetto, and I will die on the hill with this argument, to me, Hot Fuzz is still a horror film. I know Shaun of the Dead is the horror, it's the zombie one. Hot Fuzz to me is still a horror film because it's a slasher. You have this, it's kind of like The Wicker Man. You have Nicholas Angel, he's like a city, big city cop. He goes to this small town, this small village, and he's figuring like there's something not quite right going on here, and nobody else seems to see it. No one else believes him. No one else believes that there's been a murder. There's that kind of Wicker Man aspect to it, but there's this cloaked villain. You can't see the identity, and through the film they're picking people off one by one in different ways. And then towards the end, Nicholas Angel even has a final girl circuit, runs away from the villain and finds the bodies of previously murdered people. So to me, it's a slasher, but it's a slasher mixed with action. So it's just perfect. It has the usual Edgar Wright style to it, beautiful transitions. There's the usual perfection of crafting the soundtrack around the film. So every song you're listening to, there is a message in it that is relative to the film as a whole or the current scene. To me, it is perfection. It is one of the most perfectly made films, and I love it just as much every time I watch it. So, unsurprisingly, after that glowing recommendation, I gave Hot Fuzz 5 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, another rewatch of a horror, because again, for a recap with the upcoming release of A Quiet Place Day 1, which I believe is coming out tomorrow, but this will be 3 days ago for you. I rewatched A Quiet Place 1 and 2 because I did a recap of those in preparation for day 1, despite it being a prequel. I did the same thing with The Omen, so I thought I would do it with this one. So on the 7th of June, I rewatched A Quiet Place. This again, like Pearl, I think is not for everybody. Everybody doesn't seem to love these films, but to me, this is one of the most beautiful horror films. Is it one of the best or scariest or, best example of horror? Maybe not. But as a film, as a piece that has been written, crafted, portrayed, acted, produced, everything is so beautiful. And if you have the physical media copy of A Quiet Place, I would highly, highly recommend watching all the behind the scenes footage, because you learn how much of a passion piece, how much of a love project or project of love this was. And I just think that if people argue the point that horror is unemotional, horror is full of characters, who you don't care about, who are just there to be killed, how it can't make you feel anything. You'll know what I mean, because as horror fans, we often get it. We all know someone in our life who has tried to be derogative towards horror. And I think that this is one of those films that I would choose to show to that person, to showcase not all horror has to be gory for shock value. Not all characters are there to just be killed off. Okay, so again, I gave A Quiet Place 5 out of 5 stars and a heart. That is the third film so far that has had that. Also, on the 7th of June, I went to watch the newly released The Watchers, which there was some confusion for me over this film. This is a film called The Watchers, based on the book The Watchers. But in the UK and Ireland, it is called The Watched, because on Netflix there was a TV show called The Watcher, I think, or Watcher, something like that. And I believe, as the story goes, people thought it would be too confusing and people would mistake it for this TV show on Netflix that came out like 2 years ago. So they decided to change it to The Watched, which in my opinion only created more confusion, because when I was seeing movie posters with The Watched on and The Watchers, I was like, well, which one is it? Are they the same film? But anyway, I digress. That just felt like an unnecessary choice as far as I can see. A young artist gets stranded in an extensive, immaculate forest in Western Ireland, where after finding shelter, she becomes trapped alongside 3 strangers stalked by mysterious creatures each night. Okay, so my thoughts on The Watchers, or The Watched, has changed a little bit since I went to see it. Now, when I watched the film, when I was initially watching it, I thought, now this is clever. I can see foreshadowing, I can see themes, I can see beautiful imagery, clever writing. I'm so excited for this film to unfold. And I kind of thought, am I going to really love this? Also, visually beautiful. Any film that chooses to film in Ireland, well done. It is set in Galway, and it was partially filmed in Galway, but it was also filmed in Dublin and Wicklow. And many of you will have heard me say at some point that County Wicklow is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I love it to death. And so many films and TV shows filmed there because of its beauty. So the sprawling countryside, the coastlines, the forests, absolutely gorgeous. As the film progressed, and by the end of the film, I understood everything that had happened, but I felt like maybe I didn't. I didn't understand how I felt about it. I thought the beginning has set me up to believe that there's imagery, there's foreshadowing, there's hidden messages and themes and things to maybe unravel and unpick, and when you rewatch it, you'll see more little things hidden. But by the end of the film, everything felt like it was explained, it was wrapped up and offered to us on a plate. There was nothing left. So the ending didn't match up with the beginning for me. Did I like it? I honestly didn't know, and I still don't really know. I have done a full review of it, which I'll leave a link to here. I don't know. I don't even know how to word it. Honestly, it's the most bizarre film in terms of how I think about it that I have had in a long time. I don't know. Do I like it? Do I not? In terms of rating, I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. No heart, because I don't think that I do love it, maybe not even like it, but I cannot deny that it is a well-made film. It is a really good directorial debut from, is it Ashana or Ishani? Ishana Night Shyamalan. Great directorial debut. She has a beautiful eye. The colour theory, the colour palette in it of the blues and the yellows, absolutely stunning. The performances are wonderful because, I mean, you've got some really good horror names in this. You've got Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, Owen Fury. All really good. I don't know. Okay, moving on to a film that I can form a sentence about, that I can put my thoughts into a coherent paragraph for you. This is another brand new release for this year, and this is my second French horror film that I have watched. I earlier in the year watched Infested, or Le Vermin, and then this was my second entry into French horror. I'm not sure it is a perfect example of French horror, but I absolutely loved this film. And that was the release of Under Paris on Netflix. In the summer of 2024, Paris is hosting the World Triathlon Championships on the Seine for the first time. Sophia, a brilliant scientist, learns from Mika, a young environmental activist, that a large shark is swimming deep in the river. To avoid a bloodbath at the heart of the city, they have no choice but to join forces with Adil, the Seine River Police commander. Woo boy, talk about a film that is divided opinion. If you look at reviews both online and in Letterboxd, people seem to either like this or really, really hate it. So many people that I follow on Letterboxd have rated this so low. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I always try to see their point of view, and I can understand why people might not like this. It's not technically a well-made film, but I had so much fun with this. I would say this is a film of two parts. The first part is based more in realism, in real science, in real environment. And in that one, this was the first time that I have... I would say the first time. I was going to say Frogs from the 70s is maybe a little bit, but not fully. But this is the first horror film where I have seen them go fully. The animal of this creature feature, the creature of this creature feature, is a victim. They are merely acting with their natural instinct out of survival or protection. And I've said before, I have this moral dilemma in that I love creature features. I don't know why, but I do. But I am aware of the whole sharkploitation, the damage that Jaws did, how they are negative portrayals of the creatures within it, and also how much of a villain can the creature be when it is just doing what comes natural to it. And so I do have this inner conflict. So to watch a film where it was saying, yeah, this animal is killing, but it's just doing what's natural. So for example, in the opening of this film, these marine biologists go out into the ocean to find the shark that they've tagged. They find her, and a group in the water are all killed by the shark and eaten. And another one on the boat, our main character, she is attacked and almost like dragged down into the depths to her death. Later in the film, a character says to her, "You're upset about this, you have anger towards the shark, but what happened was your fault. You went into the shark's territory. You were in her home. She attacked you to protect herself." And I just think it's so refreshing and rare that we actually have a film take this approach and say these things. And I also love as well how this film never rams its message down your throat. It's never in your face. It's never too on the nose in terms of giving a message of look after your environment, look after animals. It simply uses real images to convey its message. So in the opening film, these biologists go into the ocean, and honestly, it contains the most horrifying image of the film, and that is just plastic everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Visually, it's kind of beautiful in how the light comes through it, but it is horrifying to see all this plastic there. And that's all they do. They don't even mention it, I don't think. They just show you it. And then there's another one later on where there's this slideshow that is broadcast over the internet, and they just show you images of people killing sharks for their fins, for whatever dumbass reason. We just kill a load of sharks and other fish. And again, it's just saying, look, yeah, I'm an activist, an eco-activist, but I'm literally just stating facts. And I think that that is a clever route to go, because people often react more to visuals than words anyway, and can get you, it can get you back up a bit when people are a bit ham-fisted with it. So I think they handle that really well. That's the first half of the film. More serious, more based in reality. The second half of the film is a batshit crazy, balls to the wall, absolutely leaving science at the door fun fest. This is where science exits, and this shark is a brand new type of shark, so all rules are off, all bets are off. It can be whatever it wants to be to make this horror film, and contains some wild scenes. There's one where they go into the catacombs of Paris, and there's this circular room, and there's this feeding frenzy. The shark has this feeding frenzy with people that are there. I mean, the shark is jumping out of water, there are limbs flying everywhere, blood spurting everywhere. Then there's later on this incredible scene where there are these sea mines that are set off, and basically the Seine just overflows everywhere. So you've got kind of the serious side, then you've got the ridiculous side, and the ridiculous side is ridiculous, and I wonder if this is maybe what put people off the film, but I had so much fun with it. I absolutely loved it. And the end credit scene as well. In the film, we've seen the shark is tracked and you can see where they're swimming, like this path of this red light. And in the credits, it zooms out from Paris and then different cities, and then it ends up zooming out on the world and you can see the track of where the shark has gone. So I really liked that as well. It made the credits really interesting. I gave Under Paris 3.5 stars out of 5 and a heart. Okay, the 8th of June was a really busy day for me. I actually have this really pleasing thing this past month. I watched 2 films on the 4th, 2 on the 6th, 2 on the 7th, and then I watched 3 on the 8th. So after Under Paris on the 8th, I also did a rewatch of Ghostbusters. Yes, I have just recently watched this in the last 2 months, but I rewatched it because it was the 40th anniversary of Ghostbusters on the 8th of June. So I really wanted to give it a rewatch on the anniversary. I did. You guys know my thoughts. You guys know I absolutely love Ghostbusters, so we don't need to hover on that one for too long. Then the final film that I watched on the 8th was Wonka. This is the Timothée Chalamet film that came out last winter. It's like a magical film, so I think they released it for like the magical Christmas period. Willy Wonka, chock full of ideas and determined to change the world one delectable bite at a time, is proof that the best things in life begin with a dream, and if you're lucky enough to meet Willy Wonka, anything is possible. This again is a film that is not at all going to be for everyone. This is, I think, a PG. It's like a family-friendly, fun, magical watch. It's based off of Roald Dahl's book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and also is meant to act as a prequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from the 1970s, with Gene Wilder in the role of Willy Wonka. It is very much based in that universe, and Timothée Chalamet's, is it Chalamet or Chalamet? Timothée Chalamet. His performance is very inspired by Gene Wilder's. Now, this is also a musical, and I know that word puts that movie to death quicker than many other things. Not many people like a musical. I don't mind them. There are good and bad musicals, as there are good and bad action, good and bad horror. So I'm open to try it. But you know, it was late at night. It was very, very dark. So I was just fully engulfed in this film, completely lost in that world. I was getting a little bit sleepy, so I was a little bit more docile. And I think I was just really pulled into the magic of this world. And Timothée Chalamet did a really good job as Willy Wonka, and some of the original songs were really fun. There was plenty of little nods to the one from the 70s, which, if you're a fan of that, just made it just so much more enjoyable. I don't feel like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I don't think that's a good adaptation of the book. I also don't think that the Johnny Depp Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is a good adaptation. I don't think that's a good film. Do not like it. The only redeeming feature of that film is that Christopher Lee is in it as Willy Wonka's father. So this one, I went into it thinking, I'm not expecting a great adaptation. I'm just expecting to get lost in a little bit of magic and whimsy. I did, so I was happy. So I gave Wonka 3.5 stars out of 5 and a heart. Okay, then on the 9th, we had another brand new horror for this year. This is what's this now? The 4th one? Let me see, 1, 2, 3. Yes, this is the 4th brand new horror this year. This was one that I won't say I was looking forward to, but I was open to, like with Tarot. And again, I considered seeing it on the big screen. So glad I didn't. We are talking about Sting, the new Australian horror that was released earlier this year. After raising an unnervingly talented spider in secret, 12-year-old Charlotte must face the truth about her pet and fight for her family's survival. Oh boy, I did not like this film. I appreciate that the lead character in it, the 12-year-old girl, is named Charlotte, because I feel like that's a nod to Charlotte's Web. You know it, the children's book? There's a spider in it called Charlotte on a farm. It's really good. Sad, but really good. So I liked that. I also enjoy a lot of Australian horror. I did not enjoy this. I don't know who this film is for. Is it for a young audience? An older audience? It's kind of gross in parts, like there's some body horror. It's also not scary at times, but then it's also horrifying in terms of the spider, because this spider starts out tiny and then ends up huge. This film I did not enjoy at all. It's so sad because earlier in the year we had some films where I was like, not for me, not great. But as the film, the year's going on, the films are getting better, this is great. And it's so sad to have a film about halfway through where I just think, no. And I understand people have worked hard. They have put their time, their effort, their money into this. And I've never made a film, so kudos to them. There are positive things in this film. There are some interesting visuals. It's a kind of an individual idea. We've had a spider film, but we've not had an alien spider film, I don't think. It's just not for me. It is not for me. I gave Sting 1.5 stars out of 5. And that is so harsh from me. I don't tend to rate many things under 2 stars, but it put me in a bad mood. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't know who it was for. I got in a bad mood. I got in a huff with it, and I didn't really properly review it, and I give it a really low rating. And that's not like me at all. Okay, but moving on up, we can only get better from here. On the 12th of June is my rewatch of A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, this again was for the recap. This again, I know is not for everybody. Even people who liked the first film don't necessarily like this one as much, and that was me. I agreed with John Krasinski that this film did not need to become a franchise, and with Michael Bay as a producer, you can very much feel this becoming a Michael Bay film by the second one. However, there are many positives about this one, including John Krasinski coming back to direct it. He stars in the opening, the addition of the legend that is Cillian Murphy. And that guy, in a film where your characters can't say much vocally, he can say so much with his eyes through his facial expressions. So he is the right choice. If you're not going to let your character talk, get someone who can give so much through their expressions, and that is Cillian Murphy. And yes, it ups the action. Does it need to? No, not really. But you've still got powerhouse performances. You've still got people involved in it who care about this world and these characters. So there's still lots of positives in it, in my opinion. So I gave A Quiet Place 2 4 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, then on the 18th of June was yet again another rewatch. This time we were rewatching Ty West's X, the first installment in the X trilogy. Came out in 2022, like Pearl did. And this, I believe, was only my second watch of this film. I watched it in 2022. I did love it. I did really love it, but I hadn't seen it since watching Pearl. And honestly, watching this again, watching Pearl, then watching this, it hits so much differently. It's like a completely different experience, because on the original watch, my focus was on Mia Goth as Maxine. She blew me away with her performance, and Pearl was very much this background character. Then having watched Pearl, knowing her backstory, and then seeing her as the villain in X, seeing her as this older woman, seeing how things end for her, it was a completely different experience. And I also picked up on other things that I loved. For example, Brittany Snow's performance as Bobby Lim. She is an absolute highlight of this film. The performance, the character, I just love her. She's such an absolute doll. So I gave X 4 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, then I filmed a video for my patrons, which was my favourite pieces in my physical media collection. And I included in that my Alfred Hitchcock collection. And while I was filming it, I just got a hankering to revisit these films. So I did. So on the 22nd of June, I rewatched North by Northwest. This is from 1959 and stars Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint and James Mason. This is a classic glossy spy thriller where Cary Grant's character is mistaken for the spy Mr. Kaplan, and then there's lots of misunderstandings and things that end out of Cary Grant's character's control. It's a very glossy, very tight production. I gave North by Northwest 5 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, then we have the final new watch for me, brand new horror, and that is I Saw the TV Glow. Teenager Owen is just trying to make it through life in the suburbs when his classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. So, I Saw the TV Glow is another A24 film. I know some people were really excited for the release of this. It's one that I didn't know about. I only saw it as people started to log it on Letterboxd, but I decided to stream it or watch it on VOD, whatever it was. I don't fully know how to explain my thoughts on this film because it is a technically well-made film. Like, the lighting in this is absolutely gorgeous. The use of camera work in it. There's also really interesting editing in it. So the TV show The Pink Opaque, we don't just watch the two lead characters watching the show. We actually see the show itself. We see the intro to it. We see the directed and produced by. We see clips of the episode. And we also see different versions of it, how younger Owen watches it and sees it in one way, and then he revisits it as an adult and sees it in a different light, and they've made the two different versions of the show. So in terms of editing, really, really interesting, really kept it fresh as well. I took away my own message, which was feeling disjointed from life, from the rest of, other people, feeling like, why can I not be like everybody else? Why can I not be normal and, air quotes, normal, and fit in, and finding solace where you don't have it from friends or family, finding solace in media, in film or, TV shows, feeling seen and understood by fictional characters. I could relate to that. I saw that message. That's what I took away. And I know other people have as well. It is a story. It is an experience that this character goes through that will be relatable and accessible to so many people, in terms of just feeling like you're not quite at home with where you are, whether it's your skin, your family home, your friendship circle, just not quite feeling like you belong. And I think that is such a universal thing that makes this film accessible to lots of different people. So lots of positives to it. However, I Saw the TV Glow is not one of my favourite A24 films, and I think it was more about the way the film was made, in that even though the story is progressing forward, it never really feels linear. It feels quite choppy, and maybe it was about the mindset I was in when I watched it. Maybe it was about the time of day that I watched it, but it just didn't feel an enjoyable watch in terms of how the film was created, how the film was edited. So I didn't fully connect with it completely. Even though I connected with the story, I didn't connect with the way the film was made, and that really prevented me from loving it. There's just something about the choice of the filmmaking that meant it just wasn't for me. So I gave I Saw the TV Glow 3 out of 5 stars. Okay, final film of the month. I feel like these recaps are always so long, and I do apologise, but we are on to the final film, and I watched this on the 23rd of June. This is another Alfred Hitchcock film, and that is Vertigo, which stars James Stewart and Kim Novak. This is a Hitchcock film that hasn't always been my favourite. I tend to prefer Strangers on a Train, Rear Window, Psycho, Rope, those ones, and I've never considered Vertigo to be one of Alfred Hitchcock's best or one of my favourites. Now, perhaps it was the large gap between me watching it and rewatching it, or, the last time I watched it, I've seen it many times. Or maybe it's just my mindset now as a film fan, because this film is a masterpiece. This film is a psychological thriller, but almost borders into horror. You've got the idea of conspiracy and murder, but also ghosts. The idea of, is there some supernatural thing here? Is there possession happening? So it definitely dips its toe into the world of horror. It's also quite experimental in the way that it's made. There is imagery in it that is animated. There's also, when James Stewart's character has a descent into madness briefly, the way that it portrays that through the visuals is very, very artistic. I had so much fun with this one. I'm so glad I rewatched it because it has become one of my more favourite Alfred Hitchcock films. So I gave Vertigo 5 out of 5 stars and a heart. Okay, so that is it for my recap. But like I promised you at the beginning, I'm going to give you my pick of the month for June. Now, I am going to pick two. Only because I am aware that my pick of the month is not going to be something everybody would love. And I don't want to leave you hanging. So I'm going to give you a backup. Okay, so my two pick of the months for June would be Under Paris, the French horror shark creature feature movie. However, knowing not everybody is going to love this, my backup would be Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz. This is a film that cannot fail to entertain. There is something for everybody here. A masterpiece of filmmaking. Thank you for sticking around so long. I have been filming for an hour and 18 minutes. I'm going to try and edit that down so it is not as long as that. I was worried I hadn't seen as many films this month, but because we spent so long on TV, it's balanced out. Let me know your thoughts down below on things that I have watched this month. Do you have any thoughts on my comments on the films? Which were your favourites? Let me know some of your personal favourites that you have watched. You know I always love a recommendation. If you're new here and discover me through this episode, please do give this episode a thumbs up or a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to click that subscribe button to join the What the Horror family so you don't miss out on any other content. And if you would like to join this list of names here and join my Patreon just to get extra content, to support the channel, then there will be a link to my Patreon page down in the box below. I have also started something new which is for unpaid members as well, which is a community thread chat where we are currently theorising and discussing who killed who in Scream, which Ghostface, Bill or Stewie killed which victim. So if any of that sounds good to you, then head over to my Patreon. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.